You're listening to the Renegade Blitz, the best podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on RenegadeBlitz.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app.
And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast. I'm Ty Polk with Chris Ward and the new Pittsburgh Courier's Brandon Walker. Back with you to talk Steelers versus Bills. And once again, we're glad to have back on Greg Tompsett of Bills Cover One. And Greg, always a great time to talk to you. Excited to talk about this matchup.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's obviously some different things than the last time we matched up, but still a really interesting battle here, and looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say.
And really with the Bills, once again, I have them as the Super Bowl pick for me, for them coming into next year. I think it's now Arizona. So again, it's great. It's great to see that, again, that offense is still humming as usual. And it's probably went up to a new level after that thrilling playoff game. But if there's one thing to talk about, like both teams, that the injury bug, and specifically with the high-end players for the Bills and the Steelers on the defensive end, has affected them both. And just talk about, well, how the team is dealing with those, because they're missing both of their safeties, and it's going to be another potential pit-on-pit crime with Damar Hamlin and Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, it's I won't lie, I didn't know they could fit 16 names on the injury report. Like, I didn't think the font got that small. So it was interesting to see that many different guys. They actually had to make multiple transactions because they needed more than the 4 call-ups. So they had to sign 2 guys to the active roster and do the 2 practice squad call-ups. And then even coming out of that game, we kind of thought things were going better. It was really bad in Miami. They were really in rough shape. Then you added in that, combined with the number of snaps they were playing, with more guys inactive than they normally had. So the guys had to stay on the field longer. That led into kind of a snowball effect. And you had the crazy, heat, issues, and people, legitimately suffered from heat stroke at one point. So we thought things were going better, and we got some guys back in this Ravens matchup. But then during the game, Isaiah McKenzie gets a concussion. Jamison Crowder broke his ankle. Multiple guys banged up here. So we're in the same boat, ready to kind of stare at this injury report. It seems like some guys are coming back. We did get Jordan Poyer back, so that's a big one. He can at least play alongside Damar Hamlin. That's better than having to lose. It was so challenging. We had spent 5 years in this defense, but I think 2 games in 5 seasons, we had missed Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer. That's incredible. And now losing both of them at the same time was a really tough one. So at least getting Poyer back, he can kind of help babysit. And Damar Hamlin, he held his own in the game against Baltimore and looks solid. So looking forward to it there, but we'll be staring at that injury report when it comes out this week as well.
Yeah, and Greg, with the Bills offense, of course, starts Josh Allen, MVP potential candidate. This year he's a 10-3 touchdown interception ratios, completing 67.3% of his passes, and has a quarterback rating of 101. He's one of the most entertaining players to watch in the league. You kind of, you hear the comparisons of like a more athletic version of Ben Roethlisberger. But
not crazy.
Well, yeah. What is it like to watch Josh Allen every week, do what he does?
So we obviously talk about it a lot. And there's some stuff when we're at training camp or going to practices or going to preseason games, and as we're going through, we see the kids walking around. And, obviously, I just turned 41. I've been a fan since, my entire life, went through the entire 17-year drought. My entire adult life has been pretty rough with the Bills. I watched the 4 Super Bowl runs. I was old enough to know what was going on. But I was 10 at the first one. So I was like 10 to 14 during that stretch. So I knew what was going on, but I was still a kid in that stretch. And then it got rough. And from my teenage years all the way up until the last few, it was ugly. And we're watching these kids going around where they're 5, 6, 7 years old and just thinking, oh my God, all they're ever going to know is Josh Allen as a quarterback. It really, you brought up the comparison to Ben Roethlisberger. I remember that moment. It got called out. I think it was on video in the game, but also some pictures have circulated. And you had like a dad with two sons in Roethlisberger jerseys, and the two sons they looked to be like late teens, early 20s. And he was all they ever knew. Like, he was all they knew of football. Everything they knew of football was Ben Roethlisberger, and all they knew was what that experience was like. And it's just awesome to think of a young kid in Buffalo that's going to go through, hopefully, that same kind of experience of all they're going to know is what I describe as the most fun player in the NFL. Like, he's the most fun player to root for in the NFL. He plays an exciting brand of football. He's awesome in fantasy football if people own him there. He's, lays his body on the line, and he'll try to truck a linebacker, but he'll also pull up and throw a rocket 40 yards down the field. He'll try crap he probably shouldn't even try. It's just a really entertaining brand of football, and it's a fun time to be a Bills fan because of him. There's other good things. Brandon Beane's a great GM. They've built a talented roster. They've added pieces like Von Miller, but it's Josh Allen, man. Like, he's just so fun and entertaining to watch that I'm jealous of kids that aren't going to know what I suffered through to now enjoy this.
All right, we have going back that they have offense, but there's any weakness in the Bills' offense, it's the running game. It's like you got Devin Singletary. He averages about 3.7. I like James Cook out of Georgia. I think they need to use him more. And they have Zach Moss kind of underachieved a little bit. Not what I thought he would be, but I like the Cook. I think they should use him more in the offense, like as a pass catcher. What do you think that's going to be an issue down the line in the running game because they don't have a true power back?
So in today's NFL, you have a chance just to pass the ball. Like, before that, you wouldn't even be able to function. Now, with the way teams run play action, with how the Bills use Josh Allen, it's functional. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think it was going to be a problem at some point. Just the fact that you need to be able to salt away some games. You need teams to care a little bit about play action. And it's been flashes of decent runs. They've actually had a surprising amount of the explosives, like 15+ yard runs, for as horrible as the run game has been. But it'll be 1 15-yarder, then 0, 1, -1, 1, 0, over and over and over again. You see the yards per carry. James Cook, his athleticism is obvious. His talent is there. They haven't been able to trust him. He puts the ball on the ground. He's dropped the ball when he's out in coverage. He's been, admittedly, we didn't expect a lot in pass protection, and he's been even a little worse than we expected. And with everything I just rambled on about with Josh Allen, I can't have somebody playing that puts Josh Allen at risk. So I want James Cook to play, but he can't play until he can protect Josh Allen. So then you're right. I'm completely done with Zach Moss. Actually, on my show, I made the case I'm good with them to sit Zach Moss and to bring Duke Johnson up from the practice squad. I'd rather have Duke Johnson get reps than what I've seen from Zach Moss. And then Devin Singletary is, he's, I think, better than a lot of other fans realize. He's actually improved quite a bit in the pass game, and he's a passable running back. He's never going to be special. He actually has a little more wiggle than people realize. He's always better in the, broken tackle metrics and, some of the yards after contact metrics than people realize. But, there's no sugarcoating it. It's a poor run game. They've run the bare minimum to get teams to be honest about their play action. But they have some stretches. Matter of fact, in the Titans game, when they really started to pour it on, they went 35 straight pass plays without calling one single run. And, they're going to do the bare minimum. They're perfectly fine being an 80-20 team. They're fine passing the ball 80% of the time, and they'll run just enough to get your linebackers to care about the play action. So when Josh pulls it back, he can still take a shot. And honestly, would I love for them to be more effective in the 20-30% of the time they run the ball, sure, but I don't, short of them, people like to talk on, I think Shannon Sharp put it out there, short of them trading for Saquon Barkley, I don't see how it's all of a sudden, we don't have that talent. Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, Duke Johnson, even James Cook maybe eventually gets there, but until he's ready, we just don't have the talent to fix it.
Yeah, and again, when you look at that receiver room, I mean, why run? I look at all of them and I go, yeah, that you don't need to worry about a thing out there.
Yeah,
but
Khalil Shakur couldn't even get on the field, and now he's going to play. He's fun.
Yeah, but that wide receiver room again is still probably, I think, one of the best and underrated receiver groups in there. But of course, as you mentioned, Isaiah McKenzie hurt. Gabe Davis had an ankle issue that was questionable. And of course, you have another guy, Jake Kumaro, who has an ankle problem as well. But it's a pretty good luxury whenever you can look at your practice squad and say, here's Tavon Austin, just in case. So what's the plan with the receivers? Steph Diggs, of course, was on veteran rest, as always. But I imagine with a guy like Allen, I think he could throw it to you, me, and probably at least get a touchdown every once in a while.
Yeah, it certainly has now tested what was one of our deepest areas coming into the season. That was a big battle at cutdown day, was hoping other guys didn't get claimed. There's a lot of fans for Isaiah Hodgins. He's a guy who I think might get called up for this game. There's actually a decent chance it'll be both Hodgins and Tavon Austin that get called up. I think that it's just a formality that tomorrow we'll see Jamison Crowder go on IR. I will be surprised if Isaiah McKenzie plays, especially with the Tua situation and everything else going on. I have a feeling every team's going to err on the side of caution with the concussion protocol. So it still starts and stops with Diggs. There's no 1A, 1B. He is the number one receiver in this offense. The last 2 weeks, Gabe Davis has gutted through and been almost a decoy. He hasn't been what he was at the beginning of the season. If they weren't short everybody else with Kumaro out and Crowder and McKenzie, I almost thought they were going to try to give him a week off just to rest and come back, because you can tell he's laboring. You can tell he's not cutting sharp. He's not able to plant that foot and make the cuts that he normally does. The ones that you saw last year in the playoffs where he turned the guy around and had him fall down on the touchdown route. So it's a little challenging. Luckily, we were huge fans of Khalil Shakir in the draft process coming out, and we're ecstatic when they snuck him in the 5th round. So seeing him get a chance to play, he made a couple critical plays this past week. I think he takes a slot role. I think they bring up Isaiah Hodgins. I think they bring up Tavon Austin. I think Hodgins will be the backup outside guy, and I think Austin will be the gadget and backup all around to be able to play in different spots. I think Shakir will be the return guy. So they're still going to have a pretty solid receiving core, and you add in Dawson Knox, who's a very nice, well-rounded tight end. I think they're still going to be okay, but I do think it'll be a heavy Diggs week because I think they're going to use Davis sparingly or as a decoy again.
Real quick, just with the entire Bills offense, nothing's changed with Dable leaving. It feels like the same offense, maybe a little bit more efficient just off of how great they've been, really.
Yes, I would concur that there's very few changes. We haven't seen he's leaned into a bit more Reggie Gilliam as a second. He's kind of they list him as a fullback. He was actually a tight end his first year. He's an H-back. He's that kind of movable chess piece kind of guy. He's not on Kyle Juszczyk's level, but he's not far off of that. He's that kind of movable piece that can play tight end, H-back, fullback. He's maybe used him a bit more than Dable did. Quentin Morris is a guy who's similar. He's the second tight end, and he can play that H-back, fullback. So they've introduced a little bit more of that into the offense, maybe a few more heavy set personnel with 6 offensive linemen, but they're still a 70% 11 personnel team. They're still 70 to 80% pass, super high on play action. And, it's a Josh Allen centric offense. You'd be crazy to turn away from much of that. So they haven't changed the language. They haven't changed much in what they do. There's a little more 12 personnel with the fullback, but it's tweaks. It's little tweaks, little shifts. Basically, Dorsey has taken everything Dable was doing, kept the framework 80% of that, and just added a little of his flavor. But he's cooking from the same cookbook.
Yeah, and then moving to the offensive line, from left to right, the Bills have Deion Dawkins, Roger Saffold, Mitch Morse, Ryan Bates, and Spencer Brown. I remember when he was coming out of Northern Iowa. With this, what do you think about this matchup going up against the Steelers' defensive front, especially without T.J. Watt, who the Steelers have been really missing? Alex Highsmith, I think it's 5.5 sacks he has so far, but as overall, the team just had 1 sack last week. Zach Wilson was avoiding a lot of pressure, and Cam Hayward actually, it's been a kind of a big talking point on Twitter about he had 3 straight quiet games. So people are starting to wonder if age is coming up to him. He is dealing with an injury also, but how do you see this matchup playing out with the Bills offensive line against the Steelers defensive front?
So when Brandon brought up the biggest weakness of the offense, I actually would maybe make the case it's the offensive line, in which that probably leads into why the running game isn't all that great. Josh Allen hides so much of it. If you look at the ratio of pressures that are given up versus how many sacks are given up, that's Josh Allen. He actually was last year in the NFL. It was Josh Allen up here, everybody else down here. He was far and away what the pressure was given up versus what he allowed them to convert for sacks. At one point, it was 8% and change, and the second best was 16. I think he ended at 10%, but it was still way higher than everybody else of what he allowed. And he does the same thing now. The offensive line, they brought in Aaron Cromer as the offensive line coach from the Rams. He's added in a bit more zone, a bit more athleticism. We've seen some positives there. Obviously, the first 2 games were both kind of blowouts, so you weren't able to see the need for it. And it's hard with Josh Allen, but I won't lie. I'm thankful we're not going to have to face TJ Watt. I'm praying that Cam Hayward's not 100% because Cam Hayward ate everybody's lunch last time that we played. He dominated that game in week 1 of last year. So if they're not going to have to face 100% Cam Hayward, I will not feel bad in that sense, because that man terrifies me. I think that they've handled the Larry Ogunjobis of the world. I think they can handle Tyson Alualu, those kind of guys. Highsmith is a solid player, but Deion Dawkins can for the most part handle. They're not that he'd shut him down or anything like that. If it was 100% Hayward, 100% Watt, I would be worried about this game, because that's the kind of thing when I don't think any fan that looks at the point spread and looks at where these 2 teams are at from a franchise build in the moment is not expecting a Steelers upset. Of course, every fan's rooting for it. Of course, I expect every Steelers fan to be rooting for a win. If it was 100% those 2, Hayward and Watt, I would have genuine question, because that's the kind of thing that can just wreck a game plan and stop you from being able to execute. Without Watt, and we'll see Hayward's practice progression this week. I know I saw elbow and ankle or some weird combination of 2 injuries. And it looks like he's been gutting through it to this point. It's huge, because that's really what could exploit a weakness on this Bills offense. And Josh Allen can only do so much to save you from that. So that's going to be my number 1 attention point getting ready for this game, is watching that Pittsburgh injury report from a defensive line standpoint, because this offensive line is passable at best.
All right. Speaking of defensive line, let's talk about your defensive line. You got Greg Rousseau, first-round draft pick not too long ago. I heard he's developing. Ed Oliver, another former first-round pick. Not spectacular, solid. DaQuan Jones, veteran. Tim Settle in depth. Jordan Phillips, another depth piece. AJ Esonet, another high draft pick. And the future Hall of Famer Von Miller. How has Von Miller made an impact on the Bills' defense? And 2, how do you feel about the depth? Do you think that's the best part of your defense right now?
Absolutely. So there's obviously, I think the defense is strong. We'll go through some of the other position groups here, but the depth on the defensive line, especially when you consider some of the guys that I don't expect, any Steelers fans to be familiar of, but when they had Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips have to sit out these past 2 games, being able to bring up guys, Brandon Bryant, Prince Emili off the practice squad are actually like solid players that have given good reps. The domino effect that Von Miller creates, the Bills have 70 pressures and hurries and sacks through the first 4 games. Being in a position where they've got 18 sacks through the first 4 games. That's not something that we've had in the past. The Bills have been all coverage, some pressures up front, kind of getting the quarterback to get it out there, but depending on the secondary. The domino effect that Von Miller has had and the step forward we've seen from Gregory Rousseau, 5 sacks, 14 pressures. Boogie Basham has actually been a nice, efficient pass rusher in limited snaps. Jordan Phillips, in each of those guys. Daquan Jones has been fantastic as a one tech, and really set the point of attack for what they're doing. But that rotation has been the power. In the second half, they've dominated teams. I think the score in the second half of games so far is like 62-7. They're 44-0 in the third quarter. A lot of that is because they're just bringing waves of defensive linemen. And, besides Von Miller, they don't have any other superstars, but they have 8 or 9 all above average guys. Shaq Lawson is only game day active in some games. It's a guy like that is your 5th defensive end. It's really nice to have that kind of flexibility, that kind of rotation, and to just keep bringing waves of that in the third and fourth quarter when the offensive line starts to wear down. It's really paid off, and they're bringing a ton of pressure, and it seems to really be working out. So we paid a ton for Von Miller, but what he's given guys like Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Carlos Basham, on the practice squad, on the practice field, learning the reps, learning the moves, and then the domino effect he has on the field of bringing those double teams, bringing the attention and freeing things up. Right now, it's been a worthwhile investment.
And looking at the secondary for the Bills, if you want an amazing stat right now, take a look at interceptions in this league. You have the Steelers alongside the Bills, the Jaguars, and the Ravens in terms of the interception lead. And Jordan Poyer is a big part of that with 4 interceptions. Trey White, of course, is not probably going to play this game, but he's progressing off the PUP list, correct?
We could find out tomorrow. I will be shocked. My expectation is that they open up the practice window. Matter of fact, I take that back. I won't be surprised if they open up the practice window this week to start letting him get reps. I will be shocked if he plays in the game. I've always thought it was either going to be the Chiefs game in week 6 or the Packers game coming back from bye in week 8. And right now, it certainly looks like the safe bet would be they let him come back from the bye and start week 8. So Trey White, I will be shocked if he plays against the Steelers.
Well, regardless, it's still been a pretty good defense, of course, with Poyer, but Dane Jackson was a little bit banged up, and Cam Lewis, of course, is another corner as well. It's the million-dollar question now that you have Kenny Pickett as the starting quarterback. It's how are the corners going to attack this Steelers offense? On paper, it has the weapons, but of course, as you can see with it, he had 15 passes. All of them didn't hit the ground, but 3 were intercepted. And outside of really, you could only put 1 on him, and that's the Freiermuth interception. The rest was a Hail Mary that, again, I still feel that if Claypool stays upright, he has a shot at that ball.
Agreed.
And, of course, another one in which it just straight got ripped from his hands, and that's unacceptable for any wide receiver.
So the Bills' calling card under Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott is disguise coverage. They're able to disguise coverage as well or better than any other defense in the league. It's why they've been number 1 in pass defense for the past couple of years. Over the past 5 years, they're easily the number 1 pass defense. It's what they built this defense around. Is they move pieces around, they show you one thing pre-snap, and they move like crazy into other spots post-snap, and you just don't know who's going to be where. Taron Johnson is probably the secret guy that people don't know about. He's a really strong nickel corner. He just completely shut down Mark Andrews. He was on Mark Andrews every single play. Mark Andrews had 2 catches for 13 yards. He's a fantastic coverage corner. It meshes well with Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano. They're both very good coverage linebackers. It's better when we have both Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. It's better when we have Trey White, but the scheme kind of fits. Everybody does their job. It's a lot of zone. We don't ask guys to be on an island, but the zone works because you don't know who's going to be where, and you don't know who's in what zone as they move around. So it allows you to have guys like first round pick Kyrie Elam come in and play well. It allows you to have a guy like Dane Jackson out of Pitt come in as a 7th round pick and be able to play pretty well. It allows guys, Levi Wallace, that you guys have seen there, he was able to play well in this. You don't have to be a superstar to be in this defense and in this coverage scheme, because the scheme takes care of itself. So, I don't have any guys that I feel confident can lock down George Pickens. I don't have any guys that I feel like can go step for step with Deontay Johnson. But the scheme and the way that they can move things around, I do feel like they're going to show Kenny Pickett one thing, and then he's going to snap the ball, and all of a sudden guys aren't going to be where he expects them to be. And if you can't figure that out before Von Miller or Gregory Rousseau get to you, it's real hard to get that ball off. And that's what they're going to bank on. They're going to send 4. You might not know which 4. They don't really blitz ever. But they send different combinations. They'll drop guys into coverage and bring a linebacker or a safety here or there. They'll bring a corner blitz, but drop the other end. They'll move pieces around, and they're going to bank, we can get home with 4 before you can figure out where our 7 guys in coverage are going to be. And we're just going to bet you can't do it for a whole drive. So, they've had a great track record against rookie quarterbacks because of that. They've had a really strong track record against guys early in their career. It's going to be a big test for Pickett, but I will say, with some of the weapons you guys have at receiver, there are guys who can win one-on-one matchups. So if you get something isolated, if you get a guy out in space, we don't have any track stars. Kyrie Elam's a legit athlete. He was a first-round pick and an SEC guy, but that's about it. We don't have any other track stars. We don't have any big, huge monster. We don't have any Cam Chancellors floating around in the secondary. It's just a bunch of guys who do their job, know the scheme, stick to their 1/11th, and make it work for them. And they're going to see if that's good enough on Sunday.
All right, so you mentioned Milano and Edmonds. Do you think what do you rank them about a 1-2 punch at linebacker in the league? Because I think they're up there, especially with Edmonds. Was like Tremaine Edmonds, not our Edmonds. We'd rather have your Edmonds than our Edmonds for sure. But
yeah, I won't lie. The 6'5", 251 that runs a 4.5 is a nice one to have. He's nice
and you say he's not an athlete. I think he is an athlete. I think he's one of those type of guys that anybody would like to have. But what do you think of the linebacker duos in the league? Are they current?
So I've been one who has been critical. But balanced, because there are people in the Bills fan base who hate Tremaine Edmonds and just go crazy. He's not always great. He guesses sometimes. He doesn't always pick the right gap. He's not always awesome at getting off of blocks. There are a couple things they ask him. The middle linebacker role in this Bills defense is asked a ton. They put so much on his plate. He's like a pterodactyl in the middle of the field. He's got this literally 7-foot wingspan. He's got an 84-inch wingspan, and he's huge and just spreads himself out there. And he takes away this huge area in the middle of the field where you just can't throw to. And I always tell fans, you guys don't grasp how many plays don't happen because Tremaine Edmonds was there. And that doesn't show up on the stat sheet of first downs that couldn't be completed because the quarterback couldn't even dare throw it there because Tremaine Edmonds went like this and took away the entire middle of the field. This year, in the first 4 games, now we're seeing that same coverage, but he's also getting the flash plays. He's also getting the tackles for loss. He's also getting the tip passes that turned into interceptions. He's also getting the sacks. And now people are coming around and hey, he's been doing all the other good stuff for a long time. But yeah, it is kind of nice that he has some of the flash plays now. Milano has always been the other way. Milano has always been the guy who got the flash plays, and they kind of excuse the fact that he get washed out in run plays and, he couldn't, get off of blocks to make tackles, but he made the flash plays and he got the interceptions and he got the different plays. Now they're both playing really well. So I won't go crazy and say that they're, the top linebacker duo. If they play like they have the first 4 games for a whole season, you absolutely can make that case that they're one of the top linebacker duo. So I need to see more. But these first 4 games have been a heck of a start. They are off to a really, really good start. I think PFF technically has Matt Milano as the highest graded linebacker in the NFL. And Tremaine Edmonds is very good. They always trash him on something weird, but they're off to a heck of a start, and it's something we haven't seen before. And if they're going to play at this level, it's going to allow them to do some special things. And that conversation we had on the defensive line, they're benefiting from that wave of guys in front of them, and especially Daquan Jones at one tech. He's been a monster so far. He's kept them clean and let them run to the ball.
Greg, for this matchup, who do you think on the Bills team will have a big day?
So I mentioned it in the receiver discussion. Stefon Diggs is going to be the first, second, and third option. It doesn't matter if it's Marlon Humphrey. It doesn't matter if it's Xavier Jones. It doesn't matter who the other team's number one corner is. Josh Allen's going to say, I dare you to keep up with him. I dare you to stay step for step with him. His route running is unparalleled, and he's going to throw him the ball anyways. So, I expect Diggs to get 12, 14, 15 targets, and they're just going to dare them to say, all right, you guys have a good defense. I know you got some pieces, but, especially with I'm not sure where Witherspoon is, but they're going to say, if you're going to try to keep up with him with Cam Sutton or Art Mallett or Levi Wallace, all right, let us see it. And they're going to go to him over and over and over again. I think Dawson Knox will have a decent game, but they're not going to go crazy. He's going to be very aware of where Minka is every play. Again, assuming Minka's out there to play, they're going to be very conscious of that. So I don't think they're going to go crazy in the seam with Shakir or with Knox. I expect a fair amount to the outside and to test it. And, people talk a lot about arm strength, and they assume that it's always, how far can you throw the ball? And that's not what arm strength means. What arm strength does for Josh Allen is if you slip up in the slightest way outside of the hashes, he can get the ball there before you can do anything about it. He can rifle that ball in there before you have time to put your foot back in the ground and react and break on a ball. And you see it on the DB's faces every week where they put their foot in the ground and go to react and cut. And you see them like turn and the ball's by them before they even started to swipe. And they're just not used to the velocity he can get on the ball. And they're going to test that. They're going to test the outside in their ability to keep up with things outside the hashes. And, can you keep up with those deep outs? Will you get afraid of Diggs getting by you and give up he's been getting a ton of these freebies where the defensive back is afraid and starts to bail out, and he just turns around and takes a free 8-yard comeback. And, there was a couple plays against, I think it was Tennessee. They did it like 4 times in a row and just kept taking free yards. Like, all right, if you guys are afraid, and then of course they do a pump fake and go for a double move and make them pay for it. But that's where it's going to be. It's going to be Stefon Diggs. That's where it's going to go. And they're going to drive it through there. And then, we'll see who else comes with it. I don't expect a big game from Gabe Davis, but I think they're going to run him out there because you have to respect the fact that he's out there, but he's definitely laboring right now.
Yeah, Tomlin said today that he thinks, anticipates Witherspoon being out with a hamstring injury. Like their entire secondary is banged up right now. I think Levi Wallace is like probably the only player right now that's healthy. Yeah. So that should be interesting to see.
Yeah, and you got a couple seasons worth of practice reps with Levi Wallace against Stefon Diggs, so he at least knows what he's getting into.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing I guess we could bank on for it, but. I know that, of course, the big boogeyman is T.J. Watt, and T.J. Watt's not playing, and Cam Hayward. But in terms of an offense, you mentioned Pickens in terms of it. But is there a certain concept that the Steelers can use in this game? Because, of course, they have a rookie quarterback. They could at least make it interesting for their offense against the Bills' defense.
Absolutely. The Bills defense is based on allowing catches in front of them and rallying to tackle. That's how their defense works. They've had games in the past before Jamison Crowder, when he was on the Jets, he would have 12 catches for 87 yards. He would have 11 catches for 74 yards. You saw Cooper Kupp in the opener. The Bills thrashed the Rams pretty good. Cooper Kupp had 12 catches for 110 yards. They're perfectly fine giving that up, rallying to tackle, and keeping everything in front of them. They do not allow explosive plays. They just don't. Like even the Chiefs over the years, not that Hill never broke long ones, but even Mahomes and those offenses, they never went over the top. They were never able to beat him over the top. But that's a good example where if you have a special athlete who can break a tackle, who can beat a corner and beat the angle, who can, make a move in the open field, they're going to allow guys to make catches and then do things. So I don't know if, obviously Pickens looks like he's pretty special. I don't know if like yards after catch is where he's special. I think he could be that, hey, even if Kaiir Elam or Dane Jackson has good position, Pickens is the kind of guy who's open when he's covered. Like he can still go up over top and get a ball. So you get into the red zone. We don't have that kind of guy at corner who can go up for a jump ball and beat a guy of Pickens' size, athleticism, and those kind of things. Deontay Johnson is the one that actually makes me nervous because Deontay Johnson is able to find the soft spots in zone like a Jamison Crowder was, but then he's a much better athlete. So that would be what it would take. It would take a special game from Deontay Johnson and a couple special conversions from George Pickens where Johnson's getting chunk yards between the 20s, breaking tackles, getting the ball, and then yards after catch because they're allowing the catch, trying to rally to tackle, but he's evading tackles, breaking tackles, beating the angles on things. And then in the red zone, a guy like Pickens and Freiermuth, to that point as well, are using their size and athleticism to just outmuscle guys on jump balls and contested catches and coming down with it against a guy. Obviously I think Jordan Poyer can hold his own, but some of the other guys, you're talking about some pretty inexperienced DBs back there that may not be ready for that kind of jump ball scenario. So, I'll bet on the Bills scheme to not allow that to happen. But if you're, looking for a recipe of where the Steelers, pull the upset here, that would be it. It would be Deontay Johnson having a special game, yards after catch, and then Freiermuth and Pickens, really making some plays in the red zone, coming down with contested catches.
All right. Moment of truth time. Who you got? I know who you got, but
what's the damage?
Yeah. So
cover.
So that's the good question. I won't lie. I'm not gonna pick a Steelers upset here. I do think the Bills will be able to find a way to win. 14's a lot. 14's a lot of points. So it's really gonna be on that Pickett, what he can do with a full week of practice, game plan specifically for him. They have to have something up their sleeve ready to do that. Like you said, the box score is misleading last week. He didn't have a 3 interception game. I've watched it twice, getting ready for our matchup. He did not have a 3 interception game. I think he deserved one. Like the one was a rookie mistake, but like I said, the other 2, I think you're spot on that was not on him. So, it really comes down to, is he going to put up 13 or is he going to put up 24? That's the kind of thing where it is. So I do think he's going to get a little something going. I do think that the Bills have a bend but don't break defense. That's what they do. They've just bet that, hey, I bet you can't do it for 13 straight plays and put it in the end zone. And that's what they just gamble on every single week. And to this point, it's gone okay. So I do I do think that we're going to see probably a pretty active Chris Boswell game, if I had to guess. So I'm going to guess that it's in the 16 to 19 range. And I think that, especially if Hayward's healthy, especially if Minka's healthy, I don't think the Steelers defense is going to let the Bills put up 38 or anything crazy like that. So I think it's going to be like a 27 to 19 kind of game. I think that it's going to be right there. I won't be shocked if, there's a possession in the fourth quarter where it's still within a score and Pickett's going down there and you're going to find out, what your guy's got and can he do it against a big time, Super Bowl caliber kind of team, which is what I think you guys are looking for the rest of the season. Of course, everybody's going to be rooting for wins and going to the playoffs, but what really matters this season is Kenny Pickett the guy? Do you have something special here? And I think this is what's going to start that. I mentioned, I think pre-show, we talked a little bit. I'm a Kenny Pickett fan. I liked him coming out. I liked his film. I think he has some legitimate leadership skills. I think you guys have the weapons to be able to make it make sense. I think Tomlin's crazy for this stretch of schedule that he's introducing him to. But I respect it because you're going to know. Like there's no sugarcoating it. If he looks decent in this 6 to 7 game stretch, you got something. And I think you're going to find that out. And Sunday will be the start of it. So I've got Bills 27, Steelers 19. I think that they hang. I think that this defense keeps it close enough to cover. And I think it'll be, I do expect a Bills win, but I think that the Steelers will play some respectable football.
And Greg, Trubisky, he was with the Bills for 1 year, and things so far, didn't work out. Or I can't see them going back, but you never know with injuries and stuff. But from what you saw, what do you think was the biggest issue with Trubisky? The 4 games that he played, or 3.5.
So obviously, it's easy in hindsight to say, well, I guess the stuff we saw in the Bears wasn't just Matt Nagy; it was probably Trubisky. I told myself that it was more Matt Nagy. He looked decent when he came in with Buffalo. And when you combine that with, you got some nice weapons. You got Najee, you got Freiermuth, you got those receivers. This is legit. Like, I think he's going to, I thought he was going to be passable. I thought he was going to be that bridge guy that would keep Pickett on the bench and let him develop and, give him time. So I won't lie. I was a little surprised. He looked worse than what I expected. It just probably lays it bare that he's just not that guy. He's just not, in that he never should have been a top 2 or 3 pick. Yeah. He never should have gone before Watson and Mahomes. That was always crazy. But I thought there was some Dalton, some what was that?
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Like I thought that was there. I thought there was some passable, like mid-level quarterback where if everything is right around him, I don't think Mac Jones is anything special, but if you have good coaching and good defense, you can make a guy look good. I thought he was that. I thought he would Baker Mayfield. Like hey, we've seen some good seasons, some good games out of him. Do I think is he going to be the reason you win? No, of course not. But can you win with him? Yeah. And I thought Trubisky was in that tier that you can win with him. And I got to take an L. It does not.
We all take an L, man. So
yeah, it just doesn't look like it. And I have to put it on him because there's talent on this Steelers offense. And maybe the line's not perfect. But there's talent on this offense, and he's athletic, so you should be able to do some of the Josh Allen type stuff of evading pressure and getting away. And just he can't keep his eyes downfield. He gets tunneled in on just one guy. He gets tricked by post snap movement. Sadly, I think he probably burned his second chance that he had here. Because I will be shocked. Maybe we've already been joking this week that can't wait till 2023 when Mitch Trubisky's the Bills' backup quarterback again. I think he's now headed down that path, and God bless him. If I could cash paychecks as a backup quarterback in the NFL, I'd do it too. But yeah, I will be shocked if any team chooses for him to start again. Of course, anybody can start. You get in the right situation, somebody gets hurt. I won't say that he'll never start a game again. I will be shocked if any franchise chooses to start him again.
His post-game interview, he was obviously frustrated, understandably and everything. And all the indication, he seems like a nice guy and everything.
Correct. He's actually a great person. He really genuinely is. His family was beloved, super active in the community, good people. He just ain't got it.
Yeah, it's tough. He just hasn't been working out for him. But understandably frustrated. Because I think he probably sees that like this probably was his last shot, probably as a starter.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. So, Greg, I know you guys have the big picture. You guys wanted I know you guys want it. Y'all been living for it for forever. If the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl, I mean, obviously taking Josh Allen aside. Number one, who's the biggest threat? Your biggest threat that you're scared of, and two, if they win the Bills win the Super Bowl, why? Besides Josh Allen, why would they have won it?
Okay. So easy. The answer is Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Chiefs. I think you guys, as well as anybody knows, the Bengals went on a Cinderella paper tiger run last year that they were not the best team in the AFC. But hey, they won the games when it mattered, so God bless them. It's definitely the Chiefs to me. I have been a big believer of I'll believe the Chargers when I see it. I understand how nice it looks on paper. I'll believe it when I see it. The Chiefs are real. The Chiefs are tough. The Bills can beat the Chiefs. They beat them in the regular season last year. They freaking beat them for 59 minutes and 47 seconds last year. Obviously, they're capable of beating them. You got to do it when it matters. You got to do it in the playoffs. I really hope this year they can do it in Buffalo. That would be a nice one for me. So it's definitely the Chiefs, and I think they're capable of beating them, but I can't proclaim that they're gonna because they haven't done it when it matters. If they win, of course, it will be because of Josh Allen. But if there's outside of there, I do think this defensive line is the difference of what's there. Before, we could bother Mahomes, but we could never take him down. So many opportunities. If you guys remember, even a couple seasons before that, when they had Deshaun Watson in that playoff game, dead to rights, and two guys hit him, and he still finds a way to spin out and complete a pass in overtime of what's there. They just always, the Bills were always really high, right with the Steelers many years in like pass rush win rate and pressure rate, but the Steelers would be here in sacks and the Bills would be here. And that like, hey, pressures are great. Every quarterback is worse in every passing metric when you're pressured. But you want to know when you're really bad? When you're on the ground. You can't pass the ball when you've been sacked. So that's been the big difference this year is they're getting home. They're getting guys on the ground. They're coming in waves. And they're really getting home in the third and fourth quarter. So if you're going to tell me a story of where the difference is this year, I still need Josh Allen to play awesome. I still need the offense to put up a ton of points. I still need Sean McDermott to make good, sound decisions consistently. But the difference, we get Mahomes on the ground a couple times in the third and fourth quarter in critical spots because we have that talent on the defensive line to make the difference this year. So if there's, that one more step, that's the piece. I still need all the other good parts to do well, but that's the one difference maker we haven't had in the past that if we are finally able to get over that hill, I think that's going to be the one little extra piece.
You guys all good?
Oh, yeah.
Look, we got to get our score. We got to give us our scores before we.
Yeah. Let me know what you guys are expecting.
Go ahead, host.
Well,
I'm talking about.
I think I'm all around what Greg said. I think the Bills just push it on the 30. I'm just gonna give you 3 more points. That seems around it. I think that one of those somewhere along that while Kenny Pickett gets his first passing touchdown, but I think it's whenever it's kind of almost decided in a way. I just don't. There's one thing. It's just too much missing pieces on the secondary that gives me enough comfort to say it. If there was a guarantee that they had Witherspoon there, because again, I like a big corner against someone that's shifty in route running because at least there's a shot they can go and swat it at the last second. But Diggs is too good, and I just don't think this team has an answer for that. And plus, I think the running game for the Bills gets a little bit more credit at this point because there's a lot of credence with Cam Hayward. Is it more than injury with him? Is it being doubled? Or is it finally Father Time is reaching him? That's the question.
What do you got, Brandon? Are you going last?
I'll go next. I'll say this. Will the Bills cover? No. But 14's too big. I'm going to go 31-20 the Bills because of the fact that the secondary's banged up. And I know the Buffalo has their injuries, but between you round up everybody, all the players in the wide receiver core and the Steelers secondary, I put Stefon Diggs number one, the number one most talented player. I know Minka's great too, but Minka's injured. So I'm taking the healthy Stefon Diggs with Dawson Knox. And as for the offense, Pickett, I agree he'll have a touchdown pass. He will have, I think the running game will struggle for the Steelers. And he's going to have a welcome to the NFL moment. So it's going to have his struggles. And they're going to, Steelers fans, just temporary expectations. I'll go Buffalo 34, Steelers 23.
Well, I do have the Bills covering. I think I have it as a 35-13 game. I think Kenny Pickett's going to have – I agree. I think he's going to have his first touchdown pass. I think he's going to have 2 interceptions, though. And I don't know about pick six, but maybe set up a score for the Bills. And Josh Allen, I think is going to be too much his mobility factor. And Steelers they struggled getting Zach Wilson down, and they're really missing T.J. Watt. Obviously, Malik Reed, who's been filling in for him, has been pretty much doing nothing really. And as Ty mentioned, I'm worried about the secondary being banged up.
I see a sack strip fumble or two.
Pickett.
Awareness in the pocket. But I will tell you, Von Miller, I've never seen not that I didn't watch him. Of course, I watch him with the Broncos and the Rams. But anytime it's other teams, you can only scout and watch so many snaps in the grand scheme of things. I've never seen a player so consistently go for the ball every single time. It's all that he goes towards. And I won't be shocked if he gets one.
I still have memories of him just basically putting Cam Newton into the woodworks during that Super Bowl 50. And again, a guy like him, it's one thing if it's the Bills defense last year, I'd actually say that Pickett has a fighting chance, but Von Miller's the boogeyman out there. I never like any time that he has to go up against anybody's quarterback that I like, because he's going to get to him. And he's going to make life just a living hell for him.
Yeah, and the offensive line look, penalties, and they look, they kind of regress from the first 3 games against the Jets. But I just have one more question. Greg, you mentioned that you've been, I think you said you're 41, so you remember the Bills, the heyday and everything. And I'm actually from Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is where Andre Reed is from. Yeah. He's a legend there. He has the park named after him. The field there is also named after him. So I just want to know, what's your favorite Andre Reed memory, and have you ever got the chance to meet him?
Oh, that's awesome. So Andre Reed's fantastic. I have had the pleasure of getting to meet him before. The couple that stand out to me, the Oilers comeback game in the playoffs when they were down 35-3, and him catching the touchdown coming across as they were coming back. There's always one that sticks to me, and that he was the guy that really, I think Jerry Rice rightfully is credited with a lot of it, but he was one of those guys that really popularized being able to be a number one receiver from the slot and building so much of it on yards after the catch. So he was so tough and so able to really drive from the inside and being able to do that in that offense with Jim Kelly. He's I think really underrated in the history of things. It's just obviously everyone's numbers gets dwarfed now with the current passing game and everything like that. But he was a hell of a lot of fun. That was a tough dude. He was very much in that Hines Ward mode of that kind of guy who took just as much joy laying the lick on a big time block as he did making a big time catch, and also loved delivering a hit when he was going over the middle and not just absorbing them. So definitely a guy that you could tell was born in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
No doubt. Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast again. And hey, who knows, maybe if the Steelers sneak their way into the playoffs, we'll have you on another time. We enjoy
Absolutely.
having you on it.
Absolutely. Pleasure, guys. Really enjoy it. And if nothing else, wish you guys a healthy game Sunday and a lot of fun and joy going forward. I'm rooting for Kenny Pickett. I think you got something special.
Be sure to follow him at Greg Tompsett 1 on Twitter. And, of course, check out the great work that all the Bills Cover One Network does. It enhances your knowledge. And he also had Levon Kirkland on about a few days after we had him on the podcast the first time. So, of course, there's always a Steelers slant. But that's all for us here. For Chris Ward and the New Pittsburgh Courier's Brandon Walker, I'm Ty Polk. Thank you for tuning in to the Renegade Blitz. And we'll have the Bills-Steelers recap next week.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at @RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on renegadeblitz.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. The Renegade Blitz podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you can listen to podcasts.